You are already on the path of awakening. It's time to transition from a life of struggle to a life of play. It's time to discover your autonomy, agency, sovereignty, and potency. Welcome to Reveal the Game of Life.
Welcome back to Reveal the Game of Life, the show where we talk about big, expansive concepts and we break them down into small, bite-sized, practical, useful takeaways for your everyday life. I'm one of your hosts, Chris Tomaso, and I'm here with your other host,
Ollie Mandelberg.
Bah, 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 bah. And today we're talking about a very important topic, especially to me right now, as I'm experiencing a lot of disruptive change in my life. It's based on this question of, if life has a difficulty setting, can you choose to play in easy mode or can you choose to play in hard mode? And if so, what are the implications of that choice?
Yeah, well, let's give them the context of the easy mode and hard mode as we did in the game. So we just ran this game, Reveal the Game of Life live experience a couple months ago. And it was awesome. And people got so much out of it. And we're still seeing like the games progress as the game officially has ended, but people are still playing. And one of the sort of lenses we gave for the game is there are varying degrees with which you play it. And I think everybody out there has probably noticed that sometimes life is like flow state and it's easier. And sometimes we're like really coming against our shit and it feels harder. So that's just a little bit of context.
Yeah, that's a great context to give. I think, we asked people to like choose their quest, so to speak, like the big goal that they wanted to work on. And then we said that basically you can choose a difficulty setting. And the difference is not necessarily in how hard it is to get, like, it's not in the difficulty of the goal itself, but it's in the difficulty of how much change you're going to put yourself through, basically, to get through the goal. And when I say change, I mean likely the emotionally charged situations that will come up that will be part of your spiritual growth. And there's a whole aspect of that, of how the game works. And I won't get into that right now, but it's suffice to say that, so I'll give some context about my own life is I have moved from Hawaii to Portugal. I've gone from a 2-bedroom house to a couple of suitcases, me and my girlfriend. And we've experienced about a month straight of almost constant disruption. We had lots of crazy travel snafus. They lost all our luggage. We couldn't find our apartment, lots of random stuff. We had trouble selling or getting rid of our stuff right before we moved. I almost didn't sell my car. I almost junked my car and almost lost all the money on it, until the last second. And all through this, I've been working as well. And so there's been almost no time to take off for work, and we're trying to see things. So at one point we ended up in London because of our flight got canceled. And then they put us up in a hotel in London, and we're coming from Hawaii on a double-decker bus traveling around London, freezing basically, but attempting to enjoy ourselves. So in this experience, this was happening so often, it wasn't just one thing. It was just a thing, one after another, compounding, discomforting situations with a lot of discomfort, I guess we'll say, and stress. That I had this thought, what if a quantum leap meant not more positive experience, not only more, but what if it means more experience in general? And would I be willing to hold space for all of the experience that it entailed? And that was the question that I basically had to answer, because there was a lot that happened, and yet I handled it better than I ever could have. And that's one of the properties of the game that we talk about, is that oftentimes your quests are cyclical. You set a quest that is maybe a quest you wanted to do before, or you're trying to do it again, or it reminds you of the energy or feeling that you had in the past, but now you get to do it again differently. But when we say differently, we think it means I'm going to be this completely spiritually evolved person who just walks through life and nothing bad and nothing can touch me, and and everything goes well. That's sort of like what the spiritual law of attraction kind of industry is selling. That's what you become, right? You become this like master of reality. At least in this moment, that is not what the experience that I had. The experience I had is sometimes that's true. And sometimes I am on like a ride where I'm like barely hanging on. But there's this oscillation between those and a greater and greater oscillation. So coming back to this notion of it's not just more positive, it's just more. It's faster iterations and cycles and learning and more experience. So I don't know if I can turn it off though. That's the question.
So what brought this up and why we just pressed record and had, a more candid intro than usual? What's always candid, but is that I reminded Chris that during our game, he was like, yeah, so there's difficulty settings and there's easy, medium, and hard, but I'm going to be playing on hard. And so he basically cast the spell of, I'm playing hard mode now. Let's go, universe. Like, all right. And then he gets on the line and tells me, it's been a lot of discomfort and a lot of things happening one after another. And I was like, well, don't you remember a couple of weeks ago, you said I'm playing hard mode. Would you like to choose easy mode for a little while? Like, would that be something you'd like to create? And then he's like, okay, well, is that how it works? I'm like, isn't that how it works?
Yeah. And so I'm not so sure because I think that you do get to choose, but there's also, in a sense, a path that's like laid out for you. And if the path that's laid out for you is it's going to be hard, then is choosing easy not walking the path? That's the question.
Okay, so that's a good question, because easy makes it seem like, okay, now my life is a cakewalk and nothing is a challenge and I'm not being like summoned to the greatness I'm wanting to step into. And I think that's not necessarily the case, because what you're telling me also, what you're telling us also, is that through all these challenges, what you're noticing is the state of ease that you're capable of walking with is far elevated to what it may have used to be in the same situations a year or 5 years ago. You would have been in a completely different emotional and energetic state because of the shit that's been happening. Whereas now you're navigating it, even though it's uncomfortable and you're aware that it's like, damn, it's one thing after another. There's still a state of like, we're okay, we got this. There's a baseline level that has risen. That is, in my opinion, a state of ease or an accessibility of ease through that stuff. So one of the things that's coming up for me in this conversation is the Access Consciousness sort of mantra or motto or, core statement is all of life comes to me with ease, joy, and glory. And I had somebody reach out to me a few years ago when I was like preaching that, because I was obsessed with Access and still am, saying the good in life comes to me with ease, joy, and glory. And I was like, hang on a second. All the good in life comes to you with ease, joy, and glory, because you really need the ease, joy, and glory a lot more with the bad in life. So if we're designating life as good and bad situations, don't you want the bad in life to come to you with ease, joy, and glory? Because saying all the good in life comes to me is not really telling the universe no bad will ever come to me. It's just saying you only want the ease, joy, and glory with the good stuff. So no, all of life comes to me with ease and joy and glory. That doesn't mean stuff isn't going to come up. It doesn't mean that you're not going to get a leak in your ceiling, or you're not going to lose your luggage, or you're not going to like whatever the case may be, to walk outside and realize there's 2 lug nuts missing on the front tire of my van. Like, whoops, how did that happen? But with a state of ease, joy, and glory with that stuff, it becomes navigable. And so that hard mode becomes easier. But also when we're walking through life as the beacon of I exist in ease, joy, and glory, everything that comes at me, I'm here for it to be ease, joy, and glory. It might not have to be as much junk that comes up to get the transformation that we're hoping that hard, quote unquote, hard stuff is going to bring us. It might start to become an awareness rather than like a breakdown to breakthrough situation all the time.
Yeah. And I think and I certainly had this story in my mind in the past. And this is what I think this is all about, is the story was, if it's not easy, then I'm not doing it right.
There's a right and wrong involved in the
judgment, of the spiritual process. So there was this feeling of it's if this is hard, then because I'm the master of reality, right? So why would I ever make it hard? Why wouldn't I just do it? Why wouldn't I be playing on easy mode all the time and just like open up my front door and the money just comes like flowing in easily? If I'm the master of reality, why would I ever make it hard? And so therefore, from that limited perspective, if it is hard, then I'm not the master of my reality, or I'm not doing it right. Right. And so using the difficulty of life as a way to keep myself powerless, right? To keep the power away from me. And so what I've been learning here is that you can experience a lot of discomfort and still be empowered. Discomfort does not mean that you aren't empowered, right? Yeah. And it's actually a thing that stretches you. And so what I'm focusing on now is capacity. In order to be the quantum self that I want to be, the big self, the one that has the seat at the table, if you listen to our seat at the table episode, but what comes with it is a certain capacity for a large life. And I always thought that I wanted to live a large life. And one of the things that drove me away from Hawaii was that in Hawaii, I had created a very comfortable but small life. And that also happened in Santa Cruz before I moved to Hawaii. So it was a cyclical thing. And I said, no, this time I want to live a large life, and all of that entails. And largeness, the capacity, it means all of life. It means a much broader range of what's possible. And therefore, things that we might consider good, bad, with the things that we might consider good.
Yeah.
But I think there's immense freedom in that. That means that you can learn to dance with reality in a way that is impossible if you can only follow ease. If you can only think that you're powerful, if you're experiencing good things.
Right. So there's a little unpack there too, because I think when we hear the word ease, partly we're associating that with it's easy, as in it's not challenging, it's not difficult. And I guess what we're pointing at, or I'm pointing at here, is ease does not necessarily mean it's easy. That something can be challenging and complicated and demand a higher capacity of us, and we can still come at it from a place of ease rather than from a place of trauma or a place of trigger or a place of overwhelm. And that state of ease is something worth asking for. Because if we are the creators of our reality, wouldn't we like to navigate whatever challenges are coming up as we expand our capacity to sit at that seat at the table and live the big life with a state of ease?
Yeah. And I've personally felt like not easy in the past. When I lived an easy life, I didn't have ease.
Yeah.
Because I would get bored, or I would get like, I would be like, is this all there is? I'd be really up in my head. I would be comparing myself against what others were experiencing. And so a life that was easy, and I've been privileged to live quite an easy life compared to many people, was not easy for me. It didn't bring me a feeling of ease. And so I like that you're saying that they're two different things.
Yeah. An easy life and an ease-filled life, I think, are different. And yeah, something that I feel like my mom said to me long ago was the idea that the bigger the game you play in life, I'm not going to quote her well, and we'll just take this off of the mom's quote table altogether, but something like the bigness of the game you're playing in life, it demands a certain amount from you, because we're on this growth path, and you're going to stay on that growth path in one way or another. So if you choose a life that's small and like comfortable, you will have that challenge in some other way, like the emotions of it being too simple. And then, you complicate it, or you mess something up, or you break something, so you have to fix it. Whereas if you play a big life where you're literally traveling across the globe to move your life, and you're trying to manage like all these different career paths that are showing up, the bigness of the game of life that you're playing is now at a larger capacity. So it's like the things that are showing up are to meet that larger capacity rather than something showing up because you just need to spin your wheels and get some challenge in you. It's like you're choosing a bigger challenge and it's huge and big and like something you desire to give your attention to rather than sort of like the challenges that show up, I don't know, to fill that void when there isn't enough you're challenging yourself with.
There is a distinction here. And the thing that I wanted to say is that because we're talking about this, there's no like right or wrong of the way that you're interacting with reality. I know for me, comfort was something that I desperately sought for a long time. I was not comfortable. I didn't feel like I had very much money. I couldn't have I couldn't go to Starbucks and get a fancy drink. Like these kinds of things weren't easy. I couldn't buy a book whenever I wanted one. I had to always like ask myself, could I afford this? So in different ways, I was not comfortable. And achieving that level of comfort was something that was really deeply satisfying for me for quite a while. But we never stay in the same place and we never continually want the same things. Or it's possible that we will want the same things, but we're always evolving. And so it's simply just a different place on the path, I think. It's a different type of experience. And one is not better than the other, but that is, being in it right now and not necessarily having like the greater perspective. Like that's as great as this perspective I had is I just chose and wanted something different. And now I am experiencing something different.
Yeah. And I think, it's worth a experiment to say, okay, universe, I'm willing to play ease mode now, maybe not easy mode, but ease mode. And here's the places I'd like to be challenged and maybe get specific about the kinds of like transformations you're wanting to undergo or the pieces of yourself you're ready to address now and see if asking for that, because kind of what we both believe, I know, is that we can ask for what we desire and line up to it for it to show up.
Right. I think there's kind of two ways to look at it. One is that we are sovereign and can choose things directly and it's all within our power. And then another is that while that is true, there's also a path that we are forever being called towards by our higher self or whatever you like to call it. And that will naturally kind of keep pulling us. I think the choice comes in that you don't have to go down your path. You get to choose to do whatever you want, but it's not necessarily as fulfilling to why you came here to experience what.
Yeah. And if you try to dodge a lesson, you're likely to come against that same lesson over and over.
Over and over.
Like, fine, I will look at this. That's why we date the same person over and over in different bodies. Right. That's why we get the same job over and over until we choose something different. There's partly that path of, hey, you're here to learn this one now. And like, we'll give it to you as many different ways as you want, but you have to look at it.
So in that context of we have a spiritual path and there's something that we're being called towards, like a way of being or a particular life experience we're being called towards. What does it look like to be in more ease, but still going on that path? Does it mean it's less or takes more time? Like you're like, I have 10 years of experiences that would get me to that place that I want to be. But if I take the ease-filled path, not the easy path, then that goes to 20 years. Do you think it's like that? Or what do you think it means to?
I don't think it's like that. I think it's less of an emotional roller coaster to choose the ease-filled path. I think that maybe the same, that's a good question. I guess I think maybe the path of ease is like the same situation can occur and the you that's there to deal with it is resourced in a different way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So then the question is, are there certain types of discomfort that are inevitable on your spiritual path? And there's no amount of ease that will make it not happen.
I don't know. Maybe.
So let me use an example. Like one of the things I want to be a feature filmmaker, but I don't love being rejected. Being rejected sounds terrible. right? And like if you read or listen to interviews with successful people in a creative field, especially one where they don't have their own money, there's always like rejections. Like J.K. Rowling was rejected like hundreds of times before somebody accepted Harry Potter. Like that story plays out over and over, right?
Yeah.
And so I've had this probably limiting belief or story that says that I am going to be the person who gets to experience the thing that I want without the condition that I don't want, right? So I won't have to be rejected ever before I become that. Before everyone's just gonna be like, we love your ideas. It's great. Here's money. It's gonna be awesome.
I think that is totally possible if there were a way to eradicate the point of view you've just solidified, that there isn't a way to it without the rejection. If there were a way to fully eradicate that point of view, then yes. But as long as that point of view is anywhere solid in your universe, then you'll have to go through the battle, the boss fight, as we call it, of being rejected and learning how to cope with rejection to get what you want.
So I would say that the only way to quote eradicate that view is to accept that it may happen.
Right.
Is to be okay with it happening and stop making it like the thing that I can't possibly experience in order to get what I want. Right. Yeah. Because that's like
avoiding love at all costs in my youth, and then realizing, oh wait, I'd actually rather experience love and heartbreak than neither.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And so we'll call it the path of both least resistance and most growth. Is it to get so good at manifesting that you can manifest things in exactly the way you think that they should be? Or is it better to get so good at not judging what is that you no longer care that it needs to be this way or that way? That's the constant.
I think it's both. I think it's both. It's finding allowance and practicing allowance, which is non-judgment.
Yeah.
To such a point that it no longer matters how the fuck it shows up, but it does.
Yeah. And I think one becomes the other, but only the non-judgment one.
But also on that path of allowance and non-judgment, there's no longer so much pain around it not being here yet, because you recognize that you're on the path to it. And then it almost becomes less important whether you're the feature film director or whether you're the one moving towards feature film directing.
I also think that the difference, you were talking about being more or less resourced based on your like approach to doing the thing. I think of it as like, how much support do you have? You could do it with no support, and that's like hard mode, right? Or you could do it with a lot of support, like a safe space with people to help like move you through it. You could have people be like championing you to like, do the things that you want to do. I do believe that that is one way to bring more ease into the process, is to ask for how can I be supported in this? Even if it's hard, because I have experienced lots of scary emotions in my life, but it's so much better to experience them in the context of a safe space that you are in with other people. Then it becomes like transformative, and it becomes something I wouldn't say look forward to, but it's something that you can do, that you feel that you can do and no longer fear doing. I think that's really what it is. It's the fear of what has to happen in order to get what you want.
Yeah. And not being sure if you can do that, especially if you can do that on your own.
I don't want to feel like we've like gone too esoteric. So I want to bring it back to what kind of takeaways? How can people use this? I also feel like sometimes I come on this and I'm like a chaos agent that's like, is anything true? Can we believe anything? And I think that's important, because I think that if you don't do that, then you become a zealot, basically. You become obsessed with an ideology, which is really just a story about how the world should work. Whereas in practice, real spirituality, well, at least the way that I experience it, is it's constantly calibrating to what reality is showing you. So you think you have a mental model about how it works, and then reality is like, okay, but now this is happening. And you're like, all right, well, does this fit with what I previously thought? Or do I get to now stretch my mental model of how it works?
Yeah.
So, yeah. So that's why I think it's important. And that's why I was like, yeah, hit record, because I want to talk about this.
Yeah.
We're
willing to not know in a place where we're showing up saying, hey, we know stuff. I like that.
Right.
As we're willing to be like, hey, we're walking through this and navigating this and share this experience of us discovering and rediscovering and dissecting and rediscovering again what we think we know, because that's kind of the game of life. And to say that we know is to sort of succumb to the ego, which is,
right.
Even if you think you're on a path of spiritual awakening, just claiming that sometimes can be an ego place that we hang out in. So, I mean, first off, number one, what is the reality showing you right now? What are the boss fights or the quests that you're currently in the midst of? And I think one good question to start asking is, how can I bring more allowance in? How can I release more judgment in this situation? What would that look like? Who would I be without the judgment I'm holding around this situation right now? And that makes, I'm freezing my ass off on the top of a double-decker bus in London into, wow, look at London. And like, yeah, cuddle me closer, babe, because I'm cold. And now we're snuggling on top of a bus in London, you and your partner, not me, of course.
I think I like what you said, that like the first step is, how can I bring more allowance? Because one way to look at it is, and we've talked about this before, is that like, this is the only moment that really exists. And therefore it is perfect, because if it wasn't, then it wouldn't be. And so if you believe that, or can try to believe that, then that means that like judging it is keeping it separate from you. And so allowing is letting the perfection of the moment actually seep in and like wash over you.
Yeah. Rather than, judging it based on the past or based on,
right,
your projections of it into the future. What would being in this moment right now really be like? And from there, what would you like to choose or be or have or create?
Yeah. And I'm called to say that if you have a huge dream, something that feels like there is an impossible path towards it, especially with things that might be terrifying for you to experience, I would say, like, what is the thing that you're scared of most? Can you feel that? Can you let yourself like feel that and take away the I guess the resistance to it? Like I'm reminded of, I remember I was like, when I was a kid, I was roller skating, and I was so afraid to fall that I would grip the edge of the rink and like slowly move across it. And like it was not fun at all. Right. Yeah. And I was like, I don't want to fall. I don't want to fall. And my sister was like, you just need to fall. You just need to feel what it's like to fall. And now you won't be afraid of it anymore. Mm-hmm. And so she fell in front of me, and I was like, okay. And then I fell and it hurt, but then it was no. And so now I could start to let go of the wall and start to kind of, actually try to roller skate for real.
Yeah.
Because now I knew that, it wasn't going to be terrible. And we went through a lot of terrible things to get here, but none of those things broke us. And so now I'm like, I can go through all kinds of terrible stuff and still bounce back. I'm like super resilient.
We're close to the end of this episode, so I want to bring in one of the most important things that we use in our game that people got the most out of in our game too, or their games, Reveal the Game of Life live experience, which will be happening again at some point, but we're not going to tell you when yet, which is spell casting. Because yes, be an allowance, and yes, be in the moment and figure out, what is in that moment for you. And also, there's something to be said for spell casting, and whatever you're making up about right now or about the situations in your life. Is there a different way to phrase that story so that it's actually, if you are creating your reality, it's working for you instead of further against you? An example of that would be, oh shit, we might have to move because the ceiling is literally caving in, to, I bet this gets fixed really easily. I wonder what it'd be like if this was just like a simple, easy fix, and then this was a perfect place for us to live right now. Who would we be that allows that creates that chooses that?
Right. And who would we be that's already in it or has already experienced it?
So don't
feels good.
Yeah, don't hesitate to use your words to spin the story of how you'd like your life to be going. That doesn't mean you're not still going to be challenged and invited to grow, because that's inevitable. You're still in a body on this earth.
Yeah, that's where the I guess mastery or facility with this process comes in, is how flexible are you between spell casting and then surrendering to what is. Because if you're flexible, if you can move back and forth, then you're golden. Nothing can touch you, because you get to decide and set the tone for what will happen. And then you get to respond to the response of the universe, which is, but with a twist. Or here's your growth. Here's your vegetables.
Awesome. Well, hopefully y'all got something out of this episode. It was fun for us to create. And as always, check out revealthegameoflife.com if you want to know more. Listen to some past episodes, share some with friends if you can. And we'll be back next week for another game, another episode of Reveal the Game of Life.
See ya.
Bye.